Hey, this is Josh. So today I'm going to go over a head install for you guys. I'm going to show you how I do it, and I've been very successful doing it this way. I don't pull the cabs. It takes more time for me to pull the cab than it would to already have the heads out. So it's a cost saving and time saving for me. So today I have a set of heads. Here's one head right here, and I have another set, brand new set right there. Here's the truck, so you can see what it looks like without the heads in it. You can tell that I don't pull a lot of things out. I keep the air box in there. I keep a lot of stuff still in the truck. So it's very, very easy for me to do it this way. I've done many trucks this way, and for me to pull the cab off the truck, it just takes more time to get everything disconnected and get the cab up in the air. And it's hard for people that are doing it in their driveways that don't have a lift. So this video I'm going to walk you through. I didn't get a chance to show you guys how to take them off, but this will kind of give you a brief. This can be, I guess, a part 2 on how to get them on, so you can just basically reverse what I'm doing here. So right now the heads are removed, and I'm going to show you guys how I clean up the block. Now, a lot of people use the 3M, the brushes and stuff like that for the dock hose. I don't. So what we're going to be using today is I use some WD-40 and a stoning block. So basically I just take a stoning block and I just go back and forth on the cylinder hit on the block, and to clean up all the gasket material, and that's how I do it. So I'm gonna clean the block up really quick, and then I'm gonna start showing you how I prep the heads to get the heads installed. So now I'm just gonna take air and blow all this out and blow the holes out. Make sure there's nothing in here. I'll clean all these out. Okay, now I got the head gasket on the head, so it's ready, or on the block, so it's ready to go. Now I'm gonna start prepping the head. So what I'm gonna do, the rocker carriers have an O-ring on them. I did replace this one, so it's got a new O-ring. So I've seen some people reuse them. I don't. I always change them out because I don't want any leaks. So you got to basically put it this way: when the truck's running, there's oil sitting in here, and if when it's at a slant, and you don't want any oil leaking by, because it'll just drip down on the exhaust or whatever. So I change it out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this rocker carrier assembly, and I'm going to mount it. I'm going to put it on this. Pretty much like so. There's 2 bolts on this one, and these are the big bolts. So this will go here, and this one will go here. So I'm gonna torque these down real quick. There's also dowel pins on the bottom of the rocker carrier to make it line up easier for you guys. So let me put these bolt this down really quick, and then I'll get to the next part. Okay. So what I do next is I just take the injectors, and you cannot reuse these copper washers. So I just put these, I take these off using a razor blade, and then just slide right off. So there's your copper washer. And then for the O-rings, I just cut these because I'm going to put new ones on there, so I just cut them off. And then I use the Motorcraft seal kits. There's other kits on the market that you can find on eBay. I think Alliance or something like that makes something. It's up to you if you want to change out this O-ring. unless it's broken or worn down, I really don't touch it. There's no need to replace this, even though the kit comes with one. It's up to you if you really want to replace it or not, but I've never had any of these fail. Unless it's a very old truck or it's all worn down when you take it out or deteriorating. I don't really bother changing it out. So what I do with these ones, so the copper washer, the easiest way that I found to get these on is when you put them on the edge. I grab a 8mm socket, deep socket, and basically just put it on there like that and just push like that. So there's that. So that's already done. So now you just continue, and pretty self-explanatory on how these go on. So the black one goes to the top. And then your white one goes on the bottom. Now, some things you might want to look at when you're replacing these injectors and putting them, back in the truck. Make sure that these filters on the side, make sure that there's no debris in them. If they have a little bit of debris on there, that's going to hurt your fuel pressure. So you want to make sure that these are clean. So what I'll do is I'll take the injector and a hold down clamp, and I'll go ahead and install it inside of inside the head as it's sitting. I'll install it in the head before I put it in the truck. You could wait until you get these in the truck to install these, but it's not in the way of anything, and they're a lot easier to install when they're out. Another thing I want to stress, I've seen this done a lot. People are taking these injector plugs and they're installing them upside down. That is not the correct way. If you look at how these are done, let me make sure you get in the frame. If you look at the injector, this part with the writing on it, okay, it's flat, goes on the top. So that way your injector harness is in correctly when you install it. So make sure that these are pretty straight up and down, and then I just push it in like that. So that way you know it's locked in. And then before I put the valve cover on, when I'm working on the truck, I'll show you that I hook the injector harnesses up to these prior to putting anything out on top. That way if it starts slipping through, because it's not in all the way, this one's in all the way, I can tell you that right now, but sometimes they slip out, so I make sure that the injector harnesses are all hooked up before I continue. So let me, I'll get the injectors installed on this one and then I'll continue. Okay, now I got all the injectors put in. Make sure these bolts are torqued down before you install these two injectors here. This is an 05 or an 06 truck, so it's going to be a little bit different than some of the other ones. Some have bolts here and here. It just depends on the head. So now I torque these down 28 foot-pounds on every one of these. Then I'll go ahead and, since this is the driver's side head, I'll go ahead and install the exhaust manifold gasket. A lot of people don't run gaskets. I do. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. I don't like things to leak, so I'll go ahead and throw a new gasket on there and install the driver's side. Make sure you got your driver's side manifold on the right head. Another thing is, when you're installing the injectors, right now I have it, you can see a block of wood underneath on each side, so the injector tips will stick out about 1/8 of an inch. So yeah, make sure that you're not setting the head flush on a bench when doing that. Alright, so let me go ahead and tighten these bolts up down on the, tighten these down on the exhaust, and get all these installed, and I'll continue. So this is what it looks like when your head's ready to go and be installed. This is the passenger side head. This is the one I'll be putting in first. I used a chain on this one, and I just bolted the chain down here because I wanted it to be at an angle when I put it in the truck. The head studs, if you're using ARPs or if you're using factory head bolts, you want to bring these down and use zip ties on the back 3 only, just so you can get them in. I just push them down until they're just about flush with the head underneath, and then that way they line up, and you don't have to worry about it binding or anything. So make sure your dowels are in place on the block. Make sure everything's torqued down on the head. The exhaust manifold's torqued, and so I torqued those bolts to 28 foot-pounds. The injectors are torqued down to 28 foot-pounds, so everything's ready to go. So now I'm just going to lift it up and crane it in the truck. Now, this is what it looks like on the truck that's got the head gasket in there. I'm using a Molly head gasket. When you drop it in and you get it about halfway down, there's a grounding wire in the back, so you want to make sure that you hook that up first. So I'll usually hook that up when it's hanging there and then continue lowering it down. Another thing you want to worry about is make sure that there's nothing in the way right here. No, usually this will be bent over like this, so make sure that all your wires are out of the way and there's nothing that's in the way of your head meeting the gasket, because if anything gets in the way, you're gonna have problems. So that ground wire, this ground wire right here, will be hooked up to the head on the back of the head. So yeah, I'll be hooking that up as I get it halfway in, and then as I get it down, I'll lower the head down. Now, if you noticed, there's no engine mount on the driver's side. Engine mount's been removed. So what it's doing is it's cocking the engine towards the driver's side just a little bit. So this is what's giving me the clearance to get a socket into the head stud on the back, and not having to remove the air box. Okay, so now we're just lowering it down a little and letting it sit on the dowel pins. And then if you want, you can push these down a little bit so they're sticking out about ½ inch. And that way it helps you find the holes for the studs a little better. It'll line up a little easier. You don't want it to move around very much because there's like a little film on top of the gasket material. And you don't want to screw up the seal. So just try not to move it around too much back and forth. And once it's in there, we'll go ahead and remove the chain. What I do is I usually take a couple of these bolts, like that one, and I'll put one right here. And then I'll just make sure it's lined up, like that. And then we'll go ahead and remove these. Careful not to drop anything down the holes. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the chain and then come back to you. Next, I'll start putting all the studs in. Okay. Then you only want these to be about hand tight. So what I'll do is I'll just So just get them snug. And don't crank them down. And you can also remove the zip ties now, since we don't need these anymore. Get some more light over here. So just cut these off. Some of these you're gonna have to do by hand until you can. Oops. Okay, last one. Okay, so all these are in, and now we'll go ahead and install our bridges and the rocker carrier assemblies and also the push rods. So for the push rods, there's brass on the top, or copper. And then when I push these in, I always push down just to make sure that you're in the lifter. You can feel it be kind of spongy. So you'll know if it's in, if it's a little spongy. Make sure that there's nothing binding in the way. Like these ones here, these push rods actually don't have anything on the top or on the bottom. But you can see the swirly part on this one is kind of where the rocker carrier assembly was working its way into it, but there's no grooves or anything on it. On the bottom, they usually stay pretty shiny, and they don't have any lines or anything down here. It's just chrome. So that's, if you don't have any brass on the top, that's how you can tell which one was top and which one was bottom. I don't really worry about putting them back in their exact location. I've done the same with both trucks, never had a problem either putting them back in the same way they came out, or putting them in different order. They're all the same length, so and there's nothing to adjust here, so there's nothing to really be worried about, in my opinion. The lifters, the valves are all different. They're all cut down to the same exact height, so I know everything's going to be exactly the same on this head. So I'm going to continue with showing you how to put the rocker carriers, or the bridges, in. Now with the bridges, you'll notice that they have a groove to it. One side's kind of grooved out and the other one's really round. I usually put the groove side facing downward, so with this one being like this, because you'll notice that there's a little bit of play. I've always done it this way. I don't know why. I never had an issue with it going. I never put it in any other way. In my opinion, the way it's angled, and I don't want the top ones to move. I rather have the bottom ones have a little bit of play when the valves go up and down. So that's the way I do it. Again, I don't worry about order, because on these ones, you'll notice where the rocker carrier was pushing down on. And a lot of people will say, well, these are grooved out for the valves. Well, this has all new valves in it anyway, and they've been cut, so it's not going to really matter on this one. So there's your bridges. Now we're going to do the rockers. So on the rockers, you'll notice there's a roller lift, like a little ball. It's a hardened ball, a little BB in there. You want to always make sure that you got those in. I've seen them fall out a few times, so just make sure that those are in there before you put these on every one of them. Let's see here. these on. Okay. Make sure that there's no debris on the top of these, because the washer for the head studs are going to go on here. I also put, you'll notice that there's some gray lubrication on, it's the ARP lubrication on the threads. I also put lubrication on the washers, so when the nuts start torquing down on these, it spins and it doesn't twist these up. So this isn't the right one for this. Let me get a different one here. So these ones on the end, they're kind of specific towards these ones, so you can't really mix these ones up. If you try putting the other side on, rocker carriers from this side to the other side, you'll notice that these are going to be longer, so they won't fit right. Next, I'm going to go ahead and just hand tighten down all the screws for the rocker carriers. Now what I'll do on all the threads, on the studs, the bottom threads, I already put lubrication on them, but I use ARP Ultra Torque assembly lube on all this stuff. I don't use WD-40 or oil. Even if they were factory studs, factory head bolts, I'd still use the ARP stuff. It's a lot finer than the oil is. What I do is I just take a little bit with my finger, and I'll just put some on my finger and I'll just rub it on the bottom of the nut, and then I'll stack the washer on it, and then I'll put some on the top of the washer and then put them on here, and then I just get these all put on. And then what I do is you start your torque sequence, so getting these in there. Okay, so now those are all nice and tight. Now what I'll do is I'll go ahead and torque these down. I'll start at like 75 foot-pounds, and I'll get all these started on being torqued, and then after that I'll go ahead and tighten all these up to 28 foot-pounds on these. Okay, now I got it all the head studs are torqued to 75 foot-pounds. We're following the ARP's torque sequence. Now I'm gonna go ahead and torque the rocker carrier assembly bolts down to 28 foot-pounds. I'm also gonna tighten down the other bolts that are on by the intake manifold on the head. These ones right here. I'm going to torque all 5 of those down to 28 foot-pounds as well. Next, we'll go ahead and torque all the studs down to 150 foot-pounds. Okay, next. So you guys can see how I can get to those back studs here. I'm just using a 1/2-inch socket. It's a short socket, so it gets back in there pretty easy. So I can get to all the studs here, no problem. Okay. This is the hardest part of the job. Next, you want to torque the studs down to 210 foot-pounds. So that's what I'm gonna do right now, and then take a break because it's a lot of work. Okay, so now that I got the passenger side head on and torqued down, I'm going to show you guys how to start on the driver's side. So what I got to do is you need to go underneath the truck, and you want to put a block on the transmission pan just behind the engine. Let's see if I can get some light down in here. So I put a block right here, because what I need to do is I need to lift up the engine to get the engine mount back in. So I will bolt the engine mount on right now, and I will also start working on the driver's side. So I need to get just enough clearance to get this engine mount in. So these will bolt right here to the block, and then these go into the frame here. So you need to get enough clearance to get this back in there, and make sure you put it in correctly. You can't really screw that up. So yeah, so I'm going to jack up the engine and go ahead and just lightly bolt these down. You don't have to really get them tight right now, but you want to make sure that these are in the slots, so that way you can, when you lower the engine down, it slides right into place. I've had issues with these not lining up correctly when you jack up the engine too much, but we're going to have to, I'll show you how to work with that. So right now I'm going to jack up the motor and start mounting the engine mount in. Alright, so I went ahead and put the motor mount in, but do it really loose. If you do it too tight, the holes won't line up because the engine is jacked up too high. So I just have it in here. I got this one right here, kind of tight. This one's a little loose, and it'll move around, but at least it lines up with the pegs going into the hole. So I'm not going to worry about that right now. Next, I'm going to go ahead and get the block stoned. So I'm going to stone this block and prep it for the head gasket for the driver's side, and then we're going to lift up the driver's side head and put it on the truck. Okay, I'm getting ready to install the driver's side head. I got the block all stoned, and I got the head gasket in place. Now, one thing I forgot to point out is when you get new heads, or if you get them back from the machine shop, They're universal, so you can use them on either side. Make sure that the plugs are in right here for the fuel rail. You don't want to forget these, because if you, as soon as you're done with your install and you go and turn your key on, this is just going to shoot fuel out the back, so that way you don't have a mess. So always remember to check your fuel plugs there. Another thing is, on the driver's side, I install the fuel line onto the head. So this is already on there, ready to go. I could talk to you guys a little bit about banjo bolts here. These are the 6.0 ones. You can run the 08 ones if you guys are looking for a little bit more performance. The 08 ones are a little bit different. They will thread in. They'll work exactly the same, but the 08 ones are less restrictive, and they're a little bit. They're basically nothing on the inside of them, so you get all your fuel flow. So if you want performance, if you're looking for performance, if you're running bigger injectors, I would recommend running the 08 banjo bolts on the fuel rails for these instead of the 6.0 ones. So now I'm gonna go ahead and I got this one angled with using the chain as well. I can show you how I have the chain wrapped around the. I go from the rear of the exhaust, and then I come up through this side, and then I wrap it around, and then I use 3 bolts and bolt it to the intake part of the head. So this one's ready to go. I'm gonna go ahead and lift this one up, and then I'm gonna show you guys how to get the fuel lines lined up. Okay, so I want to show you guys how to line this up. What I do is I take the fuel line off of the head. I'll take the oil filter housing, and I'll just put it on top to make sure that all these are lining up correctly before I let go of the head. So the head's not even bolted down yet. It's just setting on the block right now. Now the way that you want to get your fuel lines lined up, if you look down, you'll see that first it goes this top one right here should be at the lowest point. Now there's supposed to be a clamp that holds these two together and bolts on right here, but it's missing in this truck. So this one will go goes right here. So the banjo bolt is right underneath. So the second line here goes right behind it. It's kind of hard for you to see in the video, but I get all these lines pulled up before I lower the head on completely, because you got to squeeze it around the bracket. I didn't want to take this bracket off, so that's kind of showing you how I line things up. I just hand tighten these nuts here and this one here, and just hold it on here and make sure everything's perfect before I get the head bolted down. So now that I got these lined up, all these fuel lines lined up, and I know that they're gonna fit perfect, then I drop 2 bolts. I put 1 bolt here and another one probably at the back, and I just get it snug, just enough to hold the head, so that way we can unbolt the chain. So now I'm gonna unbolt the chain and start putting in the head studs. So the only problem is when you're gonna put the last stud in, kind of hits the firewall right here. So I have them jack it up just a little more, just to get this in. So as soon as it goes up, a little more. Yep, a little more. A little more. There it goes. All right, good. Come back down a little bit, or that should be good. Yeah. So now you got all your studs in on your driver's side, and then we'll go ahead and start putting the push rods and rocker arms on. Okay, I watched Diesel Tech Ron's video on his rocker carriers and stuff like that when he was doing a head gasket install on one of the 6-liters, but he didn't really go into specs on these and show you the differences. So this is what I'm going to do here and show you some differences and some problems. First off, these clips, I've seen them break. If they do break, don't get all frustrated and worried about it. You can get these clips by themselves from the Ford dealer. They come to a package. There's a part number for you. Second of all, there is a difference in the rocker carrier assemblies themselves between an 04 and an 05 and up engine. So if you look at these two side by side, you will tell that this one's a little bit bigger than this one because it's got more meat on the outside. And where the clip goes on the rocker side of it, it's got more of a gap right here than this one does. So you can see the wearing, it's just a little different. So these have a part number on them, a casting number, and they also have a year. So when they're original like this one comes out of an 04 truck, this one came out of an 05 truck, and it'll say 05. So anyways, the clips, they're a little bit different. This one came out of an 03, 04, which is this style here. If you look on the inside, the only thing that's a little different is this pin right here on the bottom. So that one right there is just a hair longer than this style. I don't know if this will work on the older styles or not, but when you buy these ones, make sure you get the right one. So there's a broken one there. They're just plastic, so if you drop these, they will break. They're a little brittle. So there's the clips, and here's your rocker arm here, and these are pretty much the same. So you can use I wouldn't see a problem using this style here, but this does look a little different on this compared to this. So just try to keep it the same, and there you go. I'm gonna install this, fix this, and then put it in the truck. Okay, so I got the rocker arms installed, and I got these just snug. They don't have to be, you don't want them really tight, because I just want them to move around just a little bit. Another thing I wanted to show you guys is this wire goes to the camshaft positioning sensor. Make sure it comes up and around through like that, and not through this way. You don't want to stretch it out and stress it. And then so now I'm gonna go ahead and put the rest of these bolts in here, and I'm gonna go ahead and put the nuts on the nuts and washers. Again, I'm using on the threads, use the ARP assembly lube. I got a whole jar of it, and make sure that everything is perfect. These are all seated onto the valve stems, and you're all good to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the nuts and washers on for the ARP studs, and I even have the washers and the nuts. They have lube on them as well, the assembly lube, so they don't bind when you're torquing them down. Okay, now I get this on. I'll just go ahead and get these clips on. Just gonna snug these up. Okay, so those are all snugged up. So I'm going to go ahead and start my torquing sequence. I'm going to torque all those nuts down to 75 foot-pounds. Okay, so now I got all the head studs torqued down to 75 foot-pounds. And then after I did that, I went ahead and tightened down all the smaller bolts. These bolts here, these are all been tightened down to 28 foot-pounds. So now I got a preload on the springs. So some of them are going to be preloaded, some of them are going to be loose depending on the cam position. So now I'm going to go ahead and continue torquing the head down. I'm going to go to 140 or something like that foot-pounds of torque on the nuts. Same thing I did on the other side, and then I'm going to go to 210. And then I will let you know when I'm done with that. Okay, so I got all the head studs torqued down to 210 foot-pounds. Now, the engine's still jacked up in the air. That's fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a long extension. This is a 1/2 inch flexible ratchet head. It's got an 18mm socket on there. What you want to do is you want to remove the belt around the crank. So this doesn't have a fan on it, so it makes it pretty easy. So just make sure that the belt's not binding up, so that way the crank can spin freely. I prefer this method to double check everything. So what I do is I just put the socket on here, and I just crank the motor by hand, clockwise, to make sure that all the rocker arms are going up and down and everything's good to go and not binding. Usually if something was wrong, since there's a preload, you'd either shoot out a push rod or you break something. And I'd rather it bind up by hand than using the starter wire. So doing it this way, I spin it about 4 revolutions and make sure there's still no glow plugs in it, so it makes it pretty easy to spin over with a 1/2 inch ratchet, and I use a long one. So just spin it over about 4 times. That way you know that all your rocker arms are moving up and down. You can watch them, make sure nothing's binding. If you hear anything that sounds weird, then stop what you're doing or try to figure out where it's coming from. But this is how I know that everything is good. So everything is ready to go. If you have to, you can take these out to torque those down, and you can use a 6mm Allen. You can put it on a socket wrench or whatever and get that off. And that way you have more room for your torque wrench. So that's torqued, and now I'm going to take the oil rail and put the oil rail on. I'm going to do this while it's up in the air because it's a little bit easier. I want it up so I can get both the standpipes. I want to get the standpipe in there after I put the oil rail on. On the passenger side, it's going to be a little different. So let's do the driver's side really quick. We'll get the oil rail put on, and then I'm going to lower the engine down into the onto the frame. Alright, to get the, if you don't notice, I use a little bit of a cushion right here. Makes it easier to lay up here. So make sure you have your standpipes. Make sure they're the updated versions. What I do is I take this apart, just pull that apart like that, and I drop this in there first. I already have a dummy plug in this side. I never took it out when I took the motor out, or I took the rail off. So I'm just going to let this drop down in there, and then I'm going to put this in like that. So that just got seated in there, and then I'm going to tighten that up. But I'm going to do this after I get these screws put in, so it's just loose on here. So let's go ahead and get those on. These are all 30mm Torx, or T30s. You got them all in there, and start at the top. Just snug it down, and then I just do a little bit of a pattern here. So you know you're getting it on even. And for the back ones, I take the extension off. Okay, so that's done. Now I'm going to go ahead and torque this down. Okay, so there's nothing else for me to do on this driver's side, but go ahead and put the valve cover on. So make sure you put these in the right sequence. And if they're 12 millimeter, when it's up, it makes it a little easier to get to this back bolt. Okay. Now, next thing you want to do is you can lower the motor down and get the engine mount into place. All right, so the engine mounts down. I don't have it nutted yet on the bottom, but I will when I get down underneath the truck to do the install on the Y pipe bolts. But this truck has an aftermarket 5-inch exhaust, which is fine. Even on the stock exhaust, I do the same thing. And what I do is I put a block underneath the exhaust pipe, right where it starts to go up on the truck, and I jack it up. And I just jack it up a little bit just to give me some clearance and some working room while I'm putting stuff in the truck. So it gives me clearance for the intake manifold and the bolts and pretty much everything that I need. So right now I'm going to take the Y pipe assembly and I'm going to put it in the back. So I'll go ahead and drop that down from the top here. Okay, so I'm going to just go ahead and put the Y pipe in. This one already has the E-jerk delete on it. So I'm just going to move this around. Okay, so I'm just going to set that in the back here and just let it sit against the wall. And now we're going to go ahead and get the intake manifold and put that on. So make sure that these are out of the way, and make sure that you have your O-ring installed on the front engine cover. This one I never took it off. So you can see what I'm talking about. Get a light up here. Okay, so make sure that this O-ring is installed. I make sure that these are good and not deteriorating. They do have replacements for these, but these stick out pretty good and they're not damaged. So I'm going to go ahead and reuse these. And then, so right now, we're gonna just go ahead and make these move out of the way a little bit. And just go ahead and put the intake manifold on. And then continue there. I'll show you how I put the intake on. So when I install the intake manifolds, what I do is I put the screws through, and there's a little O-ring on the gaskets here, so it holds this gasket on, or the O-ring gasket on there. So make sure everything is clean, and I'll just lift it up just like that and place it right on the engine. Okay, so I got the intake manifold put on, and I just pulled the wire harness up and over, so everything's basically just loose, just laying here. Now the next thing I'm going to do before we get too carried away is I'm going to install all the glow plugs and route the glow plug harnesses up. Okay, so I went ahead and installed the dipstick, the glow plugs on the driver's side, and these are not interchangeable from driver's side to left to, you know, there's a driver's side glow plug harness, and then there's a passenger side glow plug harness, so make sure you have the right one. Usually the driver's side has this clip on here. This is supposed to clip onto the side of the FICM bracket that goes about right here, and you'll notice that it clips in. Once you get your dipstick bolted in on this bolt here, there's a little plastic clip that slides down that bolt. So next, I still haven't touched the passenger side, so the glow plugs are still out. Next, I'm going to go ahead and plug in the fuel injection harness. So the injector harness is going to be plugged in. So I'm going to install that. Okay, so got your harness pulled up and over, and you'll notice that these clips here are supposed to hold the bolt. They're locators, basically, is what I call them. I got the injector harness installed. I pulled the wire all the way to the back and plugged in the IPR valve. I plugged in the oil temp and the oil pressure switch. I take the turbo wire and I kind of put it up underneath these wires over here because I don't want to smash it. Because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to work from the back of the truck forward. So I'm going to install the turbo, then the oil cooler, or the oil filter housing is going to go on, and then I will put the belt on, put the fan on, put the alternator on, and so on and so forth. So this pretty much concludes the video on how to get this installed. I will show you how I put the driver's side oil rail on in a second. That one's kind of tricky, and there's two bolts on the oil rail that you can't really get to very easy, so I'm going to show you how I do it. And there's also two bolts on the valve cover that's kind of hard to get to as well, and I'm going to show you how I get those out. So anyways, that's that. Okay, so I got the turbo mounted in, I got the oil filter housing mounted on, I got the lines done on here, the Vickum's installed, and the belt is pretty much ready to be put on the alternator. Now I still have to put the fuel line on this side first, and since I have it off still, I want to show you the differences between the banjo bolts. So this is an 08 style banjo bolt, and you can tell that there's pretty much nothing in there. And this is the 6.0 style. So there's those. So I'm gonna go ahead and put on the fuel line on the driver's or the passenger side, and then continue on with putting the alternator on. Okay, on the passenger side, I got all the glow plugs put in. Now, on the standpipe, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and drop. Let's put some light on here. Sorry guys, the lighting's not the best. Okay, so I'll go ahead and take the standpipe tube and I'll put it in the hole. And bam. And just push down. You'll feel the rubber O-ring on it kind of seat into the standpipe thing. So I put that on first, and then I put the oil rail, the high pressure rail on first. Put the high pressure oil rail on. So I'm gonna put the high pressure oil rail on now, and then I'll show you how to do the bottom screws. Okay, so for the oil rail on the passenger side, to get these Torx bolts in there, what I do to tighten these up and how I break them loose, since it's hard to get a socket drive in there, is I take one of these, it's a 30 Torx bit, and it will fit in here like so. Then I take a 1/4 inch ratchet drive, and I basically just put this on there so I can break it loose, and I could tighten it up if I have to. So I can get in there just enough to get my my arm up underneath the air box, and I tighten this down like that. You can also get it on top of the oil rail a little bit if you like. And then if you have an extension to go on these, that'll also reach as well, so you can get it on the top of the oil rail better. Okay, so this is how I get these bolts. I put my arm underneath the airbox here. And I'll just put this on like that. Let's see if I can move this light back so you guys can see what I'm doing. So I just hold my finger on the top, and I'll go ahead and wrench these down. There we go. They're still really loose. If you can, tighten them up with your fingers first before using the Torx bit. And there's that. So I'll do the back one and do the valve cover. Again, with this is in 2 pieces again. So, and it's the updated version, so make sure you have the updated standpipes and dummy plugs in here. And also, before you put the valve cover on, make sure you have the O-ring that goes on this, or else it's just, you're gonna wonder why your valve cover's smoking. Okay, last thing. I got everything pretty much installed on the truck. Fans in, alternator, boost tubes, driver's side intake manifolds in. So everything's done here on the top, except for the air filter. I still got to put oil and water in it. So now I want to go over, I'm still going to do the bottom of the truck, so I do it all in one shot. So basically, I'm going to put the nuts on the engine mount, and then this is the exhaust white pipe screws. What I do with these, it takes a 10 mil on the top, and it's a 13 millimeter socket for the nut. I go downwards, so I feed these up on the truck, so they're like this. So the nut goes at the bottom. I don't put these up at the top. It's harder to get. I use a short 10 mil wrench to get that I put around the top, and then I use a socket for the nut on the bottom, a deep socket. Sometimes you can use a swivel socket, or you can use a deep socket with a swivel on it to get these nuts off. Very, very seldomly do I have to cut these off because they're rusted up. If you use a lot of penetrating oil, you should be able to get them off. When they're off of the truck, what I do is I take a wire wheel to it, and I'll just clean these threads up and make sure everything's good, and then I use new nuts. So I just throw the old nuts away. There's two different styles. You can see the difference in these two. They're pretty much the same length, but I stick with these kind. I don't use these ones. If I have these ones, I'll just throw them away. So that's pretty much the end of that. And so I'm going to go ahead and put oil and water in it, get everything underneath the truck tightened down, and see how she runs. Thank you. Okay, so I got this starter wire pulled off the passenger side fender here. I put about, I start off with about 20 quarts of oil, just to get it, because it's going to feed the oil rails and everything, and it's got to fill up a lot of stuff. So since there's no oil in everything, I start off with about 20 quarts of oil. Now I don't put water in it yet, just because I want to make sure that when it cranks, everything's even. It just makes more of a hassle with me. So what I'll do is I'll crank it for about 10 seconds, and I'll make sure that everything runs smooth. I want a nice smooth crank. I don't want it to go, I want it nice and smooth. So let's see how it sounds. Okay, that's a nice smooth crank. So you know everything is working perfect on the valves. You got everything seated right. So now we'll go ahead and keep cranking it. And you can go ahead and start these motors up without water, but don't run them for very long. I only run it for like 15 or 20 seconds or 30 seconds, if that, just to make sure that it starts, and then I go ahead and put water in it. That's just the way I do it. I got the driver's side engine mount, it's all bolted down, and then I went ahead and tightened up the Y pipe, and then I seat it with the back first on the turbo, and then I get the V-band clamp on, and I get it nice and seated against the turbo, and I get it clamped down there first before I go down to the bottom and clamp it down from the bottom. So all of it's ready to go. We're ready to fire up, and it's going to take a few cranks here, so let's get it fired up and see how it sounds. Alright, so I'm going to use Auto Ingenuity here, and a lot of you people don't have access to Ford IDS, so this is pretty close. On an 05 and newer vehicle, you can select Get VIN on this. So Get VIN, and it pulls up the VIN number. Since this was a cabin chassis truck, it won't select the model on it. So we're going to go ahead and choose 6-liter. And go next. I don't have the air filter hooked up, so it's going to probably pull up a air filter code. So I've been cranking it for a while. I did about 5 times. So it should have a little bit of ICP pressure. You don't want to ruin your starter, so I usually just crank it for about 10 seconds. So I'm not going to worry about the codes right now. So I'm going to just go straight to Ficum Sync, Ficum Main Power, and injection control pressure. So I already got 40 pounds in there. That's a good sign. That means that nothing's leaking. So I don't have a leak anywhere. 47 volts on the 48 volts on the Ficum, which is good. Ficum Sync's going to tell me that the cam and crank and everything is seeing the Ficum correctly. So let's go ahead and crank. Nice and smooth. So I know it starts. Everything sounds good. Now I'm going to shut it off, check for leaks, and put water in it. So this concludes our video. I hope you guys enjoyed watching me do a head install on a 6-liter. Hope you guys learned a lot. If there's any questions that you guys have, please let me know. Please comment in the comment box. I will be sure to send you a message back. And please subscribe. So thank you.